and I don't make the list too long, but these three things. Number one, being obedient to the husband. Number two, not allowing a ghayr mahram to enter the property or the protected zone. So if it's not a property, if it's only a bedroom, not allowing any ghayr mahram to enter that. And number three, to protect the wealth and the state of the husband. Another big challenge that we have in the UK and in the Western world is living with the in-laws. How on earth do we manage this? Because many a times, so many problems are there. Well, the mother-in-law said this to me, the sister-in-law said this to me, the mother-in-law will say the daughter-in-law said this to me, and subhanallah, argument after argument after argument. Husband comes home, the wife will say to him, oh, your mom said this, your mom said that, your mom said this, and then he goes to the other side and the mom says, oh, your wife has said, and subhanallah, it creates turmoil. Am I making this up or is it true? It creates turmoil. So how do you address this? How do you deal with this? Now, firstly, the wife will have to remember that the husband still has a religious responsibility to be subservient to his parents. Islamically speaking, strictly speaking, subhanallah, the mother comes before the wife. And that's quite frankly the truth. That is the case. The mother comes before the wife. But the wife's got haqq and her rights, and the mother has haqq and she has her rights. If the mother is being unjust to the wife, and the husband sees that, he has to stand up for the truth. He has to stand up for the haqq. If he sees that the wife is being unjust to the mother, then he has to stand up for what is the truth, what is the haqq. Now I appreciate it's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult. On one side you've got the mum, on the other side you've got the wife, and it's extremely difficult. For the man, he should not jump to conclusions. So subhanallah, many a times the man is ready to give talaq to his wife because the mum has said so. That's wrong. He has not even seen the ins and outs. He's, subhanallah, ready to become abusive. He has not even seen the ins and outs. He's just hearing things. So you need to really work out what's going on. And I would say strictly, I would say very carefully for the men, don't jump to conclusion. It's difficult, I appreciate that, but don't jump to conclusion. For the sisters, I would say that if you're living with your in-laws, it's going to be difficult, and you're not going to have complete freedom, but you're going to need to facilitate that. You need to facilitate that, and some examples of how to facilitate that. So if you're living with, your elderly in-laws, you need to understand, you have to first of all think to yourself, they're not just his, and this is not just his parents, because that's the early problem. Oh, they're not my parents, they're his parents. And that's really the start of the problem. So you have to think to yourself, I am married to my husband, and this is my life. And I'm going to do anything that will please my husband. So amongst that is that I will do everything I can to facilitate and respect his parents. Naturally, there'll be disagreements. Don't ever think to yourself, it's going to be happily ever after. There's going to be disagreements. But a wise woman is the one who manages it. A wise woman won't need to go to every petty issue and tell her husband. And the husband doesn't need to be, a wise husband doesn't need to raise every petty issue with the mother and the wife. At times, the wife will say something, he doesn't have to go and challenge the mom. At times, the mom will say something and doesn't have to go and challenge the wife. I'll give you an example. Let's say you come home, and especially for the men, and sisters, I'm sure you can share some examples as well. So he comes home, and the wife says, your mom said this, your mom said that, your mom said this. So he says, okay, fine, I've heard what you have to say, I'll try to sort it out. Then he goes to the other side, the mom says, your wife said this, your wife said that, your wife said that. Okay, fine, okay, mom, I'll try to work this out. But keep it to that. And then, when you have the opportunity arises, say, mom, okay, no, we're living together, these issues happen, try to explain to mom. And then say to the wife, these things are going to happen, we're going to have hiccups, we're going to have issues, but at the end of the day, let's try to work these things out. And he be like the arbitrator. He tries to work it out between her wife by explaining it to her and to the mom by explaining it to her. What he doesn't do, and this is not really a wise thing to say, okay, mom, is this true? That Fatima has said this? Fatima, is this true? Mom has said this? You're never going to get the answer. It's going to be argument after argument after argument. What I would also say, and I'm going to say this, if it seems that, nothing's working out, it's so tense in the home, and nothing's working out, then there is a consideration that you should move out. Now, people have said to me, well, that's a very rash things to say. It is disrespectful to parents because they're going to be all lonely. I would say you have to be practical. If somebody's marriage is on the brink, then does that mean that they don't move out if there's a possibility to do so to save the marriage? I would say, well, if it's possible to move out and try to keep the relationship with the parents, why not give it a try? Subhanallah, many people who I have advised, and I'm going to say, this is sometimes you won't get everything that comes in black and white, Quran and Hadith. Sometimes it's about your tradition, your culture, about the society that we live in, and those things which are practical. So sometimes I've said to couples, they said, Sheikh, we've been together for 7 years with the family and it's just not working. So I said, well, try to move out. SubhanAllah. When I've said that, it has had its backlash. But majority of the cases, what I have found, like when they have moved out, and as long as they've kept a relationship with the in-laws, and especially for the son, as long as he keeps a regular daily contact with the mom and the father, he keeps regular contact, you see that they end up with a better relationship than a negative one. In many of our home countries that we come from, the tradition is that the entire family lives in one building. And it's possible to do that. There's loads of rooms, there's loads of facilities, and it's possible to do that. The truth is, here in the UK, it's just not practical. It's just not practical. You need your own space, you need your own house, where it's possible. But what I would also say, that if it comes to a situation where the parents are ill and they are elderly and they have no other option, then you don't move out. Your priority is, you work it out, but your priority is to serve your parents as much as possible. There cannot be, and I'm going to be honest and say this, there cannot be a more lowly thing, and this is happening a lot more in the Muslim community. When you go to care homes, and subhanallah, you'll find elderly parents of Muslim children who are in care homes, and the Muslim children only come and visit him or them every so often. How sad the situation is. True? How sad. And imagine, hold on, the Sheikh's not under that. And let me tell you one thing. Today, how you deal with the situation, what goes around comes around. Today, if you put your elderly parents into a care home, don't really bother about them because everything else is in turmoil. A time will come that you will become old. And your children will treat you in exactly the same way you treated your elders and your parents. Just remember that. That's why there's a very famous story that once an individual, he was complaining to his father, and because they were living together in the same home, and he was complaining to his father that, you were always creating problems. I come home, my wife's always telling me that, you're creating problems, and so on. A point came that he put his father into the shed of the home. So at the back in the garden, it's a true story, there was a shed at the back of the garden. So he got it all sorted out, kitted it up as they say, and he placed his father in the shed of the house. And then, he was playing Happy Families. Once he came home and he had a 7-year-old child. And subhanAllah, see how Allah plays the situation. He came home and he finds that his son's there in the house, in the lounge with the fire on, and they're playing. And suddenly he finds that his son is cutting the duvet in half. So he said to him, "Son, what are you doing? Why are you cutting the duvet in half?" SubhanAllah, listen to the response. He said, "Oh, Dad, because today you've put Granddad in the shed. So tomorrow when I put you in the shed, I will use the other half of my own blanket to cover you." In other words, he's already planning in his head that I'll get older and I'll put my dad also in the shed and I'll also give him some bedding and he'll sleep there comfortably. So subhanAllah, what goes around comes around, and that's true. However you treat especially your parents, wallahi, I cannot emphasize more about this. However you treat your family, especially your parents, then that will come back to you later in life. Now, especially for the sisters, I reiterate this point, that if you're going to be living with your husband in his, in their home and in his home, then you'll have to manage that. So if he says, whatever happens, my parents are not going anywhere, we're going to stay with my parents, you're going to need to manage that. You're going to need to, as I say, you have to hold firm. If you want your marriage to remain strong and happy, then you need to just, live with that. Now, it's easy for me said than done, and I appreciate it's not practical in every situation. But try your best, compromise, try to work it out. Don't give up so quick. Try to make it happen. So what about the relationship of the husband with his mother-in-law? So I've talked all this length about living, and because that's predominantly what happens. But what about the relationship of the husband with his mother-in-law? And what I would say about that is, Allah has made your mother-in-law, for the men, your mother-in-law and your father-in-law, the same status in your own parents. The same status as your own parents. So you need to be honorable and respectable for them. And how do you do that? And what I would say is, when it comes to for the men, when it comes to your mother-in-law and your father-in-law, because you're not living with them, predominantly you don't live with them, so what happens is you have a formal relationship with them. So, don't get too comfy. You know what I mean by that is, when you go to your in-laws' house, don't wander around the whole property by yourself, as if it's your own home. A lot of people do this. No, you have a formal relationship. Your father-in-law and your mother-in-law should not have any reason to complain about you. Any reason. They should look at you and think, this person is a mature man. He has the capability and the understanding and the maturity to look after my daughter. They need to have the confidence that the man that my daughter is living with is an independent, mature man, and I don't need to worry about my daughter. That's the sort of impression the man should